Thank you for pressing start on episode 75 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcast. Today, we have 2 secret games, followed by a developer interview and a review of our featured game, Animal Well. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds. The games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bo Po, but it's not only me. There's a guy with a flow who's on a journey. So won't you put your hands together, please, for the Zeo Drifter, the indie game sifter, the curse-cracking mister, DiscoCola. What's going on?
Oh man, it's hard to explain. I'm feeling a bit bubbly today, kind of dizzy, like I've been spinning around on a frisbee. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. My bubble-blowing, yo-yo throwing, frisbee surfing, slinky dropper. Those are references to our featured game, Animal Well. That was really good synergy with our cold open there.
Yeah, we really did it. 75, man. We're like 3/4 of the way to 100. I've been thinking about what 100 could look like. Recently.
I have too.
I've been thinking about it more and more as time goes on.
I have some grand ideas. We can glue our grand ideas together and make something really special. I imagine a super special big bonus episode.
Yeah.
You know, it would be after our 9th season.
Yep.
We'd do the 100th episode, and then we would start back over at 101 with season 10.
Yeah.
And it would just time out so perfectly. So, yeah. Today, we have a special guest who will join us later for the review of Animal Well. We have Jeremy of Moon Soul Games joining us, a solo dev who put out an RPG earlier in 2024 called Grand Soul Story. And Jeremy actually provided us a download code for that game.
You remember that from last episode. And so that's what we're talking about today. We're going to be talking with Jeremy. So
very cool. Yeah, so we'll be drawing upon your experience playing that game. We'll be asking him all kinds of questions about his journey and the release of Grand Soul Story. And he will add some cool layers to our review of Animal Well, too. So since we have all that going on, we are not going to do much up here at the top. We're going to move on. But before we do, if you're listening to Underplayed right now, thank you. And we love you. If you haven't already, please consider giving us a follow and a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It should only take a few seconds, and we'd really appreciate it. And if you have a friend who likes indie games, maybe share our podcasts with them too. It's time for our secret games.
Secret games.
Secret games.
I know you're playing without me.
Secret games.
Well, I'm here to tell you, baby.
Secret games.
I've been playing too.
Secret games.
In Secret Games, we each review an indie game we've been playing in secret since our last episode. We don't talk about what we're playing in advance with each other. I don't know what Disco is going to review today. He doesn't know what I'm going to review. But we each pick an indie game that we've never reviewed before on Underplayed. So we'll start with you, DiscoCola. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 75 of Underplayed.
My secret game this episode comes from Gem Drops Inc., and it is called COGEN. I'm going to say COGEN, Sword of Rewind.
Whoa, I've never heard of this.
I'm not totally surprised.
Okay, I'm excited to learn more. Is it COGEN?
GEN.
Okay, classic G instead of a J.
Yeah.
COGEN, like cogent,
Maybe.
but without the T.
Yes.
Okay, so give me the T on COGEN sort of rewind.
God. So yeah, this is a game that I got in a limited run games 2-pack with, and get ready for this name, Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X2.
What? But that's not the game you're reviewing.
That's not the game I'm reviewing. Obviously, I was in the 2-pack for the Gunvolt game, but the pixel art and the action in this game looked pretty good, so I thought, why not? I'll just get the 2-pack. In COGEN, you play as Kohaku, who wakes up near a talking sword, not too dissimilar from Transistor. And in this game, this sword is called the Exabreaker, or EB for short. Kohaku doesn't know much about what's going on, but EB tells you that his function is to, like, end the simulation or something. I kind of got a little bit lost in motivations along the way, to be honest. So, anyways, to do so, you must fight using EB and use his time reversing Ouroboros system and platform your way through the 5 zones of this facility. You face different bosses and ultimately reach the end of the line. Or do you reach the end of the line?
Mm.
As far as gameplay, it has a lot of the action platforming skills that we know and love. You get a dash, an air dash, a double jump. You can hang on walls similar to Mega Man X. But most importantly, you have Exabreaker, your melee weapon and companion. The Exabreaker can also deflect bullets. And as mentioned already, you get access to a time rewind mechanic. In this mechanic, you have like 3 charges of time rewind that automatically fill up over time. They do fill up relatively quicker if you are not currently in the action, but you will be using time rewind quite a lot because Kohaku is a one-hit death character. So if you get hit with no Ouroboros charges left, Kohaku takes an actual death and restarts at a checkpoint.
So I imagine you're rewinding a lot. Like, you're meant to get hit quite a bit.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. You're faced with like gauntlets of bullets and pits that are maybe less forgiving than they might be without a time reversing mechanic.
So maybe a bullet heck,
A bullet heck,
not
yeah.
a bullet hell.
There are some points where it's like, this is unreasonable, but mostly, yes, a bullet heck.
Okay.
There are also a few collectibles here and there, usually just like terminals that have maybe some world building backstory or like hidden spots that will just trigger conversations with Exabreaker. And of course, there are loads of machines for you to dodge and destroy. So, as for things that COGEN did well, the visuals and the sprites met my expectations. When compared to Gunvolt, which is the better comparison in my opinion, this looks a lot like the Inti Creates Mega Mans and the Gunvolts more than it does a Mega Man game. So when compared to those games, it meets my expectations as far as like sprites and how good everything looks. The stages are maybe a little bit more stale than the Gunvolt games, but otherwise everything looks pretty good. Bosses are pretty well designed, and Kohaku's sprite is a really good size. Enemy designs clearly communicate their abilities. Like if you have a robot that has a shield and a gun, you know that you have to wait for it to shoot, and
yeah.
you know that it's going to remove its shield while it's shooting.
Yeah,
like
that's one of my favorite things of like, playing Mega Man X games is just understanding that timing and
Right.
learning the enemies one by one.
Yeah, and like so the guy that's like generating a shield around its companions, you have to kind of like take that guy out first
Sure.
before you. So you kind of get the idea based on their designs.
Yeah, you're not wildly just firing at enemies.
Right.
You have to
You-
strategize a little bit.
You can, but when you do have to, you understand like what's going on. Kohaku's moveset feels pretty great. The sword combat is usually really fun in games like this, but I think COGEN pulls off a great feeling sword technique. Dashing is fun, the double jump is just the right height, and the wall jumping compared with the air dashing and jumping is tuned just right for the like traditional super wide open pits. So like if you get to a wide open pit and you look at it, you're like, okay, I know that I have to jump once, then air dash, then jump again, and then wall jump off of the wall. Like you sort of can calculate, and it's tuned perfectly for all of those wide open pits. With the exception of the last 2-ish bosses, all of the bosses are mostly pretty fun to fight. Like the Mega Man games that I love, learning the different boss patterns provides me with like satisfying growth. And this is also where the rewind function is the most enjoyable, because instead of dying and restarting at a checkpoint and starting the boss fight all the way over, I get a chance to test out a new dodge for a boss attack that I just learned.
yeah.
So that's kind of useful in that case.
Yeah, you're cutting down on the reloads.
Right.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Deflecting bullets is pretty cool. I'm just not very good at it. But that
Is it easier to do in like Katana Zero, I imagine?
no.
Oh.
I think deflecting bullets in Katana Zero is pretty hard unless you're like really laying on that time slow
Yeah.
thing.
Right.
But yeah, that about does it for things I like. Things I don't like so much. I think my largest complaint is actually hitboxes. Getting hit really isn't very forgiving. Bullets and collision damage, and especially explosions, will hit Kohaku with just like a pixel and then automatically force her into rewind. This is especially rough with the explosions, and when you're getting hit from an explosion, when you're using the rewind, it doesn't help you too much because most of the time that explosion's already going to happen. So you have to rewind like 2 charges worth to avoid getting
I've
hit.
played
from that.
rewindy games where you don't get to use that full. You don't have the full selection of time that you might think.
Yeah. So that's a little bit rough. Hitboxes are pretty unforgiving. And as an extension, apart from the boss fights, like the rewind function isn't actually all that fun. A singular rewind charge is sufficient to get you out of most situations that damage you, but even using all 3 isn't totally cutting it in situations where you are like just crowded with enemies, or God, especially when you fall in a pit of lava. It takes literally all 3 just to get back to a platform, and maybe that platform is already like about to disappear.
Shoot.
So I think in this game, I would have just rather had a life bar and maybe,
Sure.
I take a lot of damage, but I get to decide whether reversing time is worth taking that damage or not. So I think I would have rather had that risk-reward decision there.
Yeah. Sometimes we use the word gimmick affectionately. Sometimes we use it to kind of describe something that maybe is a little bit shoddily done or hokey or not really, thought through.
Yeah.
And it seems like this mechanic is how this game is trying to stand out. And
Yeah.
so maybe it is sort of gimmicky, but it is trying to say like, this is what I am. This is how I'm different from other games
Right.
like me.
And I think it fell maybe just a little bit too hard in that. Some enemy behaviors seem inconsistent, but specifically the one I mentioned earlier, the pistol robots with the riot shields. They do exactly what you think they're supposed to do. They move their shield to fire at you, but to like juke them into starting their animation doesn't behave in the way you expect it to. So you really have to really, really put yourself in a dangerous line of fire to make that cycle trigger. And there's a lot of enemies that behave in this way.
Mhm.
They just like don't behave in the way that you expect or that you're used to, or that seem different from encounter to encounter. This game does what Gunvolt games do, where Kohaku and EB are having voice-acted conversations during the platforming sections, but it also throws the text on the screen in a way that is unobtrusive. The problem with all of this is that the voice acting is in Japanese, and because the text is like not obtrusive, I'm not able to read it,
Oh.
and I can't listen to it and understand what's going on.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not absorbing anything that's happening during the action that they're delivering it to me. That's also a complaint in like the first couple of Gunvolt games that are only voice acted in Japanese as well.
You
So
almost need to look up a playthrough and
Right.
watch someone at your own pace.
Right.
And read, just focus on those words.
Exactly. That seems like the only way to do it, or I could just like stop playing the game, but that's contrary to the point of playing these fast-paced Mega Man Zero Gunvolt kind of games. Another complaint is that the game just gets too hard. Like at the end of stage 5, story things happen and you have to go through the first 5 stages again, but this time they're harder. The game does tell you as much and offers you the option to go into like a casual mode. And based on the boss at the end of stage 5, I was like, yes, sign me up. Like that's what I want to do. Casual mode all the way. So clearly the game is going to be too much of a challenge for me to beat normally. And then speaking of the boss at the end of stage 5, this is going to be maybe a little bit of a spoiler, so I'm going to try and keep it vague. Because of story stuff, in order to proceed in the game, Kohaku must lose the fight at the end of stage 5. And Kohaku like kind of agrees to this plan. But in this case, there's this life bar. So I'm thinking, that this is like similar to a Mega Man X fight with Vile. You're meant to lose, but because you have a life bar, maybe if you're just like totally cracked, you beat the boss on the first try, you get access to this like new silly ending or whatever. But that's not the case. You lose and you have to start the boss fight over. So you still have to win this incredibly hard boss fight in order to then also lose after the boss fight.
Oh.
And that fight alone took me something like 45 minutes,
Oh,
maybe more.
no.
So it felt like I was wasting my time. It did ultimately help me against the boss the second time around, the harder version of this boss. But I could have just learned those movesets the second time around. Like, I don't know. It was just like, hey, Kohaku, in order for us to like fix this situation, you have to die. Kohaku's like, yeah, okay. And then I was like, all right, sounds great. Let's do it. Let's lose this boss fight. Doesn't matter. And it kind of made me mad, if I'm honest.
Oh, no. Did you introduce your hand to a local tabletop? Your fist, rather?
Did I? I don't remember if I did or not for this. I might have. But then last, the ultimate conclusion, once you do go back through the stages again, doesn't seem totally congruent with what I understand to be the overall situation and story along the way. Like, I can kind of tell that I got a happy ending, but I don't really know like how this is the ending exactly. But I know that to a point this has to do with maybe my poor reading comprehension skills. Like, I'm maybe just missing stuff along the way. So in the end, I really love the visual identity of COGEN, and the controls meet my expectations of an Inti Create styled platformer, but so many of the systems that give COGEN its unique identity end up slowing the game down, and it does that frequently. When I play a game like this, I just want to dash and slash and crash. I just want to go, man. I just want to go. But the story, like most stories with time travel or simulations, feels kind of inconsequential. But I also am not necessarily looking for a good story, to be fair. There is room to find joy for people that love learning levels and then beating them faster and faster and more skillfully the next time. So I guess if there's a demo, maybe test it out. And if you can jive with the Ouroboros system, then I do highly recommend this to you. I didn't love the Ouroboros system, and that has a lot to do with the game. So for me, this is a 7.0.
All right. And I'm reading more about this game on Nintendo's website and other places, and I'm seeing descriptions of this sword, Exabreaker, and it's described as a sardonic sword, a sword with character, a sword with attitude.
Yeah.
And this isn't the first time we've had swords that talk to us in games, too.
Yeah, he is very much our foil. We are trying to find joy and compassion in him, and he's just like, I'm not programmed for that. Let's go.
Yeah, so I guess I was just curious, even though it is a sword, how does it compare to other companions you've had in games? Is it among your favorites, or was having a tough time getting the story through the text, making that a little challenging?
As far as like other companions we've had in games, like middle of the pack, like he's not just like a total asshat like Guru or whatever from Batboy, but I don't want to save him like the Transistor from Transistor.
Sure. There's a depth there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is giving me my goal because I am literally just waking up in this strange facility.
Cool. Well, I had not heard of this. It's another very interesting entry into this world of like 2D action platformers. Where can you play COGEN Sword of Rewind?
All right. COGEN Sword of Rewind is on Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, Switch, Windows, and I played the physical edition for PS4. And even though this was only a 7.0 for me, it is on my top 100 indies between Toem and Flow.
All right. It is time for my secret game. My secret game is called The Room 3.
I just listened to the Room 2 episode like the other day.
It's time for the Room 3 already. I always think like, oh man, it's going to be so long before I get to review the next one. And then it's time.
And then it's time.
Like clockwork,
Yep.
baby.
Is there a clockwork puzzle in this?
There is a clock tower. Oh, wait. Hold on. Yeah, there's like a clock tower-ish place. I'm looking up the names of... Yeah, there's a clock tower. It's actually called the clock tower.
All right. Well, jokes worked.
Yeah, there you go. So the Room 3 is the third game in the Room series, obviously. It is a puzzle game first released in 2015, which surprised me seeing that because I thought it was much newer. So it's about 10 years old already.
Yeah. What room are we on now? Like 5?
Well, they released the Room 4, but before that, they had a VR Room game, and I don't know that I'll play that one, but my plan is to get through all of the non-VR games in this series, so there's going to be one more next season that I review, so look forward to that. But these games are developed and published by Fireproof Games. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, "Lured to a remote island, you find yourself confined within the rooms of an ominous mansion. You must draw upon all your puzzle-solving ability to navigate a series of trials devised by a mysterious figure known only as the Craftsman. Do you have what it takes to escape?" End quote. So as I'm making my way through these games, these are actually replays through the Room 3. I've not played the Room 4, but this is, again, a revisit of a game I've played in the past. I last played it in 2019, so it's been, a good number of years now. And by that point, it was already 4 years old.
Apparently.
So this is a first-person puzzle game that takes place after the Room 2. In the previous 2 Room games, there's this character of AS that we're following, and AS has disappeared. But you, this character throughout these games, still dream about the Null, which is the 5th element, and it is the central mystery and force behind what's going on in this series. It is very powerful. The Null can transfer matter across space and time, and it's how you're able to explore all the rooms in all of the Room games. You have received a map and a vague invitation to visit an island mansion called Greyhome, which is the home of the Craftsman, who is testing your ability to pass his trials. And the Craftsman is leaving you all these notes and is telling you that he knows the source of the Null, but he can't reach it without a worthy assistant of some kind. And so you're the next one. Apparently, there's been a long series of people who have tried these trials and they haven't made it through. So
Kind of feels like Amnesia to me.
it kind of is. It's got an Amnesia vibe with its setting and its story. And so you have to prove yourself worthy. And the Craftsman is already, like before you get to the mansion, giving you this new lens to affix to your eyepiece, which you use in all of these games to see things differently and to see traces of the Null. You get a new lens that he's made for you, and that lets you explore the inner workings of devices. So there are lots of moments in this game where you're opening up a model and you see like a little shimmery sort of effect, and that means you can throw on your eyepiece and actually go into that thing, like you're a miniature person exploring around inside the inner workings of objects. So that's kind of different in this game. But there are 4 main chapters. There's the lighthouse, the clock tower, the forge, and the observatory. And then there's a final shorter sequence. And depending on how you do that final sequence and what optional items you might bring to that final sequence, you could get one of 4 different endings to this game. And this is a new thing for this series. There, in the past, there's only been 1 ending, I believe. And so now we have 4. There's a default one. But then after you finish the game, you can go re-explore Greyhome to find more hidden items and puzzles to find these optional endings. And like previous titles, this is an escape room style puzzle game. So you've got lots of buttons and switches. You're looking for keys to locks. You're using everyday objects in very unconventional ways. And each room has intricate models and devices you tinker with. And along the way, you're hopefully figuring out what the Craftsman is up to and how the Null plays into what you're doing. So this is what I liked about the Room 3. With the Room 3, I think this series continues to refine its puzzles and setting. The room 1 was all about moving from puzzle box to puzzle box, and it kind of felt connected, but kind of not. The room 2 was sort of more of the same, but it had a better variety in styles of puzzles and aesthetics between all the rooms. But in the room 3, you're walking around this mansion and things feel more interconnected, and it has the strongest sense of place of any of these 3 games so far. So there is variety throughout all of these rooms, but they each feel like they belong in Grey Home all the
Mhm.
same. So it feels like, a place where all of these rooms would exist, and I like that a lot. The puzzles are tuned just right. I think the puzzles in the room 3 strike this balance of having like a lot of quantity of steps to figure out, but also like a difficulty that's approachable for me. In the room 2, some items were obtusely hidden. I thought the difficulty was mostly pretty great, but sometimes you'd need to open a drawer and then like look on the underside of a drawer to find a hidden object, and I just never would think of that.
Mm.
This game doesn't really do that. It's more about finding things, examining the room, and thinking about how those objects you've found can be used within the room. So it feels like maybe more like some of the escape rooms I've played in the past. Also, I sometimes there's this surprising sequencing of items that you pick up. You will know that you have to get a key for a door. There's this door that you obviously need to open. It has a keyhole,
Right.
and you start doing some steps in the room to figure stuff out, and you might think, "Oh, now I'm gonna get the key, baby." But you get a chess piece. And so then it's like, what do I do with this chess piece? And then you walk around and you figure out what to do with the chess piece. And then it's like, "Oh yeah, now it's time for that key." And you get a jewel. And then it's like, "What do I do with
Ah,
this jewel?" And
jeez.
then you walk around, you figure out where the jewel goes, and it's like, "Oh yeah, now it's time for the key, baby." And then you get a wooden handle. It's not quite what you need. So I like that this game is surprising me with all these unpredictable sequences of items. It makes it hard to know when each room is going to be done sometimes,
Mhm.
but I kind of like that. I kind of like not knowing how much is left and where this is going. Also, with Grey Home, the harder, more optional puzzles after the first ending, that gives you something to do beyond the default ending. And just for full honesty here, I didn't do all of the additional endings this time, but I did them back in 2019.
Oh,
And I
okay.
remember liking cleaning that up and finding all those like harder to see details. Um, and then the visual fidelity and the set design feel like a big improvement from the previous games in the Room 3. I get to some things I don't like as much with this game here, and I think like above all, when it comes to how this game feels to play and how it's drawing me in, the location that we're in pulls me in more so than the character of the craftsman who's leaving you all of these notes and whose home it is that you're exploring. It feels like the craftsman is filling this role that the character of AS was filling before. And it's just this like disembodied voice leaving all these notes to you, and what is written never really explores anything interesting.
Okay.
So it feels like I'm supposed to care about where this weird guy is leading me, and it's really just the place that we're in. That's what draws me in more
Okay,
so.
so early question.
Mhm.
Compared to AS, is the Craftsman better, worse, or like almost exactly the same? It doesn't matter that they're different.
The things that AS would say to you were sometimes a little more abstract, I feel, whereas the craftsman sometimes seems more like mustache twirling in how he's like devising all of these traps for you. And he's like, "You'll
Oh,
never,"
okay.
at first he's like, "Oh, we'll see if you pass my tests, you silly person." And then you
You
start doing
rube.
more. Yes. And you start doing more. And then he's like, "Well, I see you might have promise." And then you do more. And he's like, "You are needed on this grand adventure." So it's like all these broad strokes, I
Okay.
feel like. Whereas AS, I think maybe did some of that stuff, but honestly, I kind of blocked a lot of that stuff out of my memory,
Yeah.
even though I've now played
It's
those games a
finding a
few
story
times.
in a Mega Man game. It's
Kind
yeah.
of, yeah. And then a lot of the places that you solve in this game, they are, the rooms that you're in, but they're actually composed of several different connecting rooms. And you need to click on doorways to go into like side rooms all the time to pick up items. And sometimes just the act of moving from room to room feels a little slow because there has to be this animation of you walking in the first person through the doorway, and it takes several seconds. And that time of going back and forth sometimes adds up, and it just kind of slows down the pacing. And then the forge in particular felt tiring because of this to me. It just seemed like it went on a little too long. But overall, the Room 3 is my favorite game in the series so far. We'll see what the Room 4 does. I haven't played that one yet. The Room 3 has such a strong sense of place with a cohesive tone and puzzles that are consistently rewarding. If I'm remembering correctly, I rated the Room 1 a 7.
Yes,
The Room 2 was a noticeable improvement. I think I gave that an 8.
correct.
I'm going to give the Room 3 an 8.5.
That's what I wrote
I
down.
just think it keeps getting better and better. And it's playable on PC, which is where I played it, Android and iOS.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions really. Is puzzle difficulty, since we're apparently the same person throughout all three games,
Yeah.
is puzzle difficulty noticeably amplified from game to game? Or is it just kind of like a Metroid game where you're just like starting at the bottom and then you get back to where you were at the end of the last game?
So you mean like puzzle difficulty increases the more we go through the game?
Throughout the series.
Throughout the series?
Yeah.
No, I would say the style of puzzle and like what the puzzles are asking of you are more refined in 3, where in the Room 2, puzzles got a little bit harder, or maybe. But by the end, there was just some really obtuse things I had to do in that final room, and I had to use the hint system.
Right.
And the hint system returns in this game, but I wasn't using it as much because I think the placement of things and the logic of what the rooms are about is much more intuitive for me.
Okay.
So I don't think it's like necessarily easier or harder, but it just feels like I get on the wavelength of this game
Okay.
more. So I guess maybe it is sort of easier in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So
That's all I really wanted to know. It looks pretty much like the next game in a series, and maybe
Yeah.
just with better fidelity. So
yeah,
I get the point.
And then, like, this is the game from the first 3 that I remembered the most vividly just because of Greyholm. And I remembered that library. I remembered the study. I remembered the clock tower. All these places were easier for me to like remember because they all connect. You can imagine the geography of where they all are versus like in the other games, you're just hopping from puzzle to puzzle and it doesn't really seem like you're in one place. You're traveling across space and time, or
Yeah.
you're just being shown all these rooms. And so
Well,
like that.
I'm interested to see where the Room 4 brings us, because I feel like we're at like a whatever that point on the hero's journey chart. We're at this like one point, so we have to be getting to the end at least in 2 more games. It kind of feels like.
Yeah,
So,
it seems like, I don't know, they really took a swerve with not focusing on AS. You would know what happens sort of at the end of the Room 2, like why AS isn't around. But now there's just this other guy, and now I don't know if the craftsman shows up in the Room 4. We'll see. So those are our secret games, COGEN, Sword of Rewind, and the Room 3. Let's move on to our interview with Jeremy Reineck of Moon Soul Games, this episode's special guest. Today's special guest is cool, to be sure. He made a game of grand adventure, a big RPG with difficulty. It's time to get a little closer with a talented composer of Moon Soul Games. Jeremy is his name. How's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Was not expecting that.
yeah, we
Who wrote
invite.
the beautiful poem.
That's all Bopo, baby. We invite everybody
Wow.
on, and he takes the reins on those rhymes.
It's amazing.
So, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. You're Jeremy Reineck of Moon Soul Games, and you made Grand Soul Story. And actually, you provided a download code for one of us to play the game, and Disco has played the game. Can you give us just a brief pitch about Grand Soul Story for listener context for anybody who doesn't know?
Sure, yeah. Grand Soul Story. It's kind of a retro Super Nintendo era JRPG. It's an open-ended game that's not necessarily open world, but you can kind of shape the narrative the way that you choose. The basic premise is that you're a refugee, kind of escaping from a war-torn country, and you're trying to make it to the port city of Yerdan, where your family is waiting. But to get there, you have to travel through this place called DuPont. It's a city state that's kind of at war. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's syndicate. There's kind of technocratic despots and all kinds of stuff going on, and then all the people sort of carrying the weight of all this. And you meet a motley crew of scoundrels and vagabonds, and try to make your way through it. And I guess the open-ended part of the game is that you can get as involved or not with the main story as you want, but basically you're just trying to get enough money to sort of travel to this place to see your family.
Well, while you were saying that, I was looking at Disco, just sort of nodding his head, probably
Okay.
Yep.
remembering all these details and thinking
Okay.
about his own journey through the game.
Cool. Cool.
So we want to ask you up first, what got you into game development and what led you to making Grand Soul Story?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a lifelong gamer. I have incredibly magical memories as a child playing Final Fantasy 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. I've discovered a lot of great games as an adult, and I'm a musician by not by trade but by passion, and I love composing. Yeah, the two just came together, I guess, 3 years ago now. It had been a lifelong dream to kind of create my own game, and started on RPG Maker, which is kind of a low coding, user friendly sort of game development software, and just started poking around, and then enjoyed the process so much that I started to develop a game around sort of the RPG Maker format, and it just sort of grew and grew. And probably like a quarter of the way through, I had a sense like, oh, this is going to be kind of a relatively big game. So really started thinking about the characters and the story and the arcs, and started composing a lot of music for it. So it kind of just happened. It wasn't necessarily like I set out with the intention to create this particular game. I just started enjoying the process of creating, and then started to fine tune it over time and realize what it was.
Yeah, I really love those creative ventures where eventually it just sort of starts spilling out of your mouth. You're just kind of like,
Yeah,
it just kind of falls out of you like some bad
yeah.
mucus or something.
And then once enough pieces are out, it all starts to coalesce into something greater than the sum
Hmm.
of its parts.
Hmm.
For some of those parts, what are some main inspirations, maybe games from your past that you've played that you were inspired by when putting together Grand Soul Story?
I think the main game that really inspired it was actually Baldur's Gate 2, which I hadn't discovered until I was an adult, and just found it to be like one of the best games I'd ever played. I think the thing that inspired me the most about that game is that it's quite open-ended, but any nook and cranny you go into, there's like a whole adventure there. And I designed Grand Soul Story to the best of my ability to be something where you could actually miss a lot of interesting content, which to me makes the world feel quite big. My hope is that you could play it through a couple times and have sort of different experiences. And the premise of the game was definitely inspired by Baldur's Gate 2, which is the beginning of the game. You're trying to get like 20,000 gold together to go find your friend or something, which is sort of inspired the premise of Grand Soul Story. So yeah, there's that element of open-ended storytelling with Baldur's Gate 2. Final Fantasy 6, just because I'm not a pixel artist. I didn't really have the means or the coding skills to do much more than like a 16-bit RPG, but at the same time, I absolutely love that style. I think the older that I've gotten, the more I appreciate just sort of more simplistic graphics.
Mm.
The days of being like really impressed by the most high definition graphics it's kind of over for me. I prefer something a little more simple, so I actually appreciate that. But yeah, in terms of the inspiration, I'd say Baldur's Gate 2, Final Fantasy 6, and probably Final Fantasy 7 in terms of that particular type of, it's not like cyberpunk, but it's this kind of grimy urban
Hmm.
uh I don't know what genre you would call that, but it's
Yeah.
quite specific. So a lot of that was inspired by what's the main city called? Midgar. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of it was inspired by Midgar.
You say a lot of these games and just instantly you're conjuring the picture in a lot of
Yeah,
people's minds just because
yeah,
they're well-known places, they're well-known games for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm not quite as familiar with a lot of JRPGs that don't necessarily have Digimon in them. So I'm curious about specifically your inspirations for like the battle system, because I noticed there's a couple things in the battle system that I personally haven't seen in other games myself, but I'm just sort of curious, like what bits and pieces do you like from other games that sort of culminated in the battle system for Grand Soul Story?
Well, I guess one of the first things is that the battle system, at least initially, was really difficult. I wanted the game to be kind of punishing, and I guess that was inspired by Baldur's Gate 2. I was kind of getting into some more like hardcore games at the time, a little like some roguelikes and stuff, and I was like, I kind of like it when you just die to like a rat or something in the beginning, and you just feel really powerless until you kind of grind your way and you and then some way into the game you have this satisfying feeling of having overcome. But in terms of the actual battle system is definitely Octopath Traveler 2. I don't know if you played that game, but it was quite a few pieces were just lifted from that because I thought that was a great system. And the thing don't I don't like about that game is the random battle. So I wanted to have enemies appear on screen that you can kind of
Mhm.
avoid. But otherwise, it's pretty inspired by Octopath.
Yeah.
It's cool hearing you talk about, what you're inspired by with other games and realizing what you also don't like about those games. And
Mhm.
every time you make a tweak, you're making it your own. You're sort of helping to build the identity of what makes your game different. I love hearing
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah. No, that's true.
So in your game, just with the story and the conversations that happen, I understand that there are some heavier topics that are explored, like geopolitical unrest and drug addiction. What is it like to write about these sort of heavier topics for a game like yours, and how do you approach these topics?
Well, I mean, first of all, something I'm quite happy disclosing, but I'm in recovery myself. I've been clean and sober for 11 years, and so it's a personal.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's personally meaningful for me, and it's not something I felt like I had seen in definitely not like 16-bit RPGs as far as I know. Um, so I thought it'd be interesting to bring in some something that was personal that I felt like I could speak to from experience. And the geopolitical conflict, yeah, I mean, I guess I feel like I live in a time where maybe because of just the mess of kind of misinformation and how hard it is to kind of pin down a single narrative of what's going on. I just feel a bit cynical, maybe, or a little bit politically not apathetic, but just
A little
yeah, unsure.
detached,
So
maybe?
I
Yeah.
wanted to reflect some of that in the game, where there's not really a good or bad guy. They're just different sides, and as you kind of explore the different paths, I think you recognize that there's this idealism for a cause on the surface, but if you dig a little bit deeper, there's just people in power trying to get trying to get their way, I
Yeah.
guess. And
Yeah, I
so
recognize a lot of that in Grand Soul Story, and even just down to like what to do with the random drug pickups that you find throughout the world. It's like you have opportunities to offer drugs to someone who's in significant amount of pain, or you have options to like withhold that and tell them to get into recovery, and you have options to like even I'm trying to like you mentioned Grand Soul Story being sort of like open ended as far as like what you decide to do. I'm struggling with like deciding to even sell the drugs at a shop if that's like something I want to do, because it's like at this point I'm participating in
Mm.
selling drugs, and so it's like trying to figure out who you are is like there's no one true like right thing in my mind as far as like what to do. So it's
Mhm.
I think you did that very successfully.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Um
definitely wanted it to be a kind of a gray world,
yeah.
and continue to be gray.
Yeah.
throughout the story.
And there's certain factions that I like started to sympathize with more than others, and just like
Mm,
trying to decide which one was the right one.
mhm.
Just because I was like not getting the money I needed, I kind of had to pick one. So I was just like, what would I get? This is the one, I guess. So,
Yeah, yeah,
um, but yeah, you did that very successfully. So kudos to you on that.
cool.
I specifically wanted to ask you about sprites. You'd mentioned that maybe you're not like super capable pixel artist, but I did notice that there are a lot of different levels of pixel sprites. Like you have your overworld sprites, you have your enemy battle sprites, and then your map sprites, and even like there's in-game photographs. And so I kind of wanted to talk about the process of creating all those different sprite styles in Grand Soul Story. How did that come about?
Well, the sprites for the characters, I'm trying to remember the name of this guy because I want to give him a shout out because he does great work. But it's like a sprite character generator. I think it's called Time Elements. But yeah, he's a guy on itch.io that just has like a simple program to put together different sprites.
Hmm.
So I use that for the sprites. That took a long time to find because I was using it was almost like 8-bit and it just didn't really fit with the environment. But another thing is that a lot of the graphics, like the tile sets, are just sort of the standard RPG maker. But I did pixelate everything because I didn't really like the quality of the tile sets, just the vanilla tile sets where it just looked like too clean, and I wanted to have a bit more of a 16-bit style. So
Yeah, I appreciate that myself. I also
yeah,
have that feeling about the default tile
yeah,
sets.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. It's a good base, but I wanted to pixelate it a bit more. Um, to also to make it mesh with the other sprites. You guys may kick me off your show as I say this, but some of it I did use AI to create the pictures and also the battle sprites, and I won't be doing that in the sequel. But as a first time developer, I had no idea how this thing would turn out. But I put thousands of hours into it, so I wanted to have battle sprites that looked good, and I just was unable to find anything on the internet, and I don't have the money to hire a pixel artist, unfortunately, to create all the battle sprites. So the battle sprites were AI, but took a long time actually. Like each one took at least like 20 prompts, and then kind of finagling the image and cutting it out and stuff. So it did take some work, but not the work of a real pixel artist, who I highly respect. I think that's pretty much all of the art in the game.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I noticed is, that's actually a disclosure on the Steam page for Grand Soul
Yeah.
Story. You see a note about the AI art, and,
Yeah.
I think you talk about something really real there, that you are kind of faced with this decision, and I imagine it must be kind of a hard one to make at first. Maybe you're not even aware of all the different avenues you could go down for finding art or making art or contracting art out of somebody else, and I know that it's sort of a big topic now, not just in games, but in all kinds of media and all kinds of jobs everywhere is the topic of AI. And so, yeah,
Mm.
it's kind of like either the game is made or not at a certain point. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you talked a little bit earlier about how you want to encourage people to replay the game. Like you have so much content in there and so many endings and so many dozens of hours of content that you maybe want to encourage someone to get to the end and then be curious about maybe another playthrough or looking up more about the game after they're done. With so much content in your game, how did you know when you were done working on it? Is there a time where you just think, oh, yeah, I'm done working on Grand Soul Story?
Um, Honestly, the thing that made me finish the game is I started working on the sequel, and I got really excited about the sequel. So I
Whoa.
said, okay, I kind of need to redirect my creative energy. Yeah, I'm definitely a person that's very driven by passion, and if I feel really passionate about something, I'm just going to put all my effort into that. So I think that's what finally released me from the first game. But I have put a lot of effort into bug testing the game and adding different features and balancing the difficulty. And I had a wonderful friend that I found by chance on Instagram who bug tested the entire game. He put in like probably 100 hours of bug testing just for free. He just enjoys
Oh my
bug
gosh.
testing and gave me the most in-depth notes. So
That's so
I doubt that
generous.
the
Wow.
game is perfect by any means now, but it's a lot better than it was because of this guy Francesco. It's an
Wow.
Italian gentleman who helped out with that. So
So that's interesting. I didn't know there was going to be a sequel. I'm learning all this right now. You're working on these games sort of concurrently at a certain point. Like there's overlap in a way. Is working on the first game helpful for seeing it right in front of your eyes every day?
yeah, no, big time. Yeah, you learn like anything. You learn a lot by just doing it, and I think I kind of suffered a lot with the first game because I had to do things retroactively. Like I realized like, oh, this doesn't really work, or this doesn't really make sense, because I didn't really know how to plan or develop a game. So I had to then go back through the entire game and try to fix all these things, which just took a lot of time. So this time around, I'm just a lot more intentional. I think that just comes from some experience doing the thing.
Well, I definitely hope it can be your Mega Man 2 of the Grand Soul saga.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of playable characters that can join your party in Grand Soul's story. I want to know if you have a particular favorite. Is there a character that you enjoyed writing and or designing the most? I mean, I feel like all of these characters have a great amount of depth, but some of them have like depth that I relate to a little bit more easily.
Hmm.
So I guess I'm just wondering where you fall with these characters.
Yeah, I mean, I relate a lot to Elsie. She's probably the best fleshed out character. Just because she struggles with addiction. She's a person with kind of a difficult past, and depending on what you do with her, she can get sober and kind of find some resolution or not. Yeah, to be frank, I think that's something I want to focus on in the second game, is being a little more intentional about character arcs going into it, and knowing, okay, this is the internal motivation of this character, this is the external motivation of this character, this is what they want, this is what's getting in the way. And like, because I think in the first game, I was a English major in school. I was just kind of going by feel, like what feels good, what for this character, what seems like a compelling kind of dilemma they have to go through, but hadn't really planned it out necessarily. So just getting myself introduced to the world of story planning and character planning, and making sure everything fits well together.
Cool. Well, I mean, I think you've got a great starting point. I also love Elsie and I love Billy and I you know, if your character writing only gets stronger in the second one, then I think you'll be in great shape.
Cool. Thank you.
Jeremy, in addition to the Grand Soul Story soundtrack, you also have a good amount of music available under the name Moon Soul. Is that right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
could you talk about your music journey and just what it's like to create music for this soundtrack for Grand Soul Story versus your other music?
I mean, the music that I make is more like jazz and soul music. In terms of the difference, I guess it's a little bit like the story writing or the character writing, is that I just sort of went with gut feel, like what feels good in the scene, what sounds good. But yeah, I guess like in the sequel, for example, I've attached like an instrument to each character. So
Ooh.
each character is represented by a particular sound. And if different characters are coming together, then you might hear also the instruments coming together. Also doing more with like motifs, repeating melodies and stuff. So thinking a little bit more globally about how the soundtrack is working together to kind of complement the story. Whereas I feel like in the first game, what kind of music is going to make this like spooky lake feel really, immersive, I guess. So it's a little more kind of gut feel.
Okay. Just from like a physical standpoint, like when you're doing your more traditional jazz, soul, kind of funk music, are you like physically playing those instruments and recording them? Like when you're doing the video game stuff, is this all like in a DAW where you're going almost note by note? Like how's it different even physically?
Yeah, my music is a lot more like live, just kind of record live. I did a lot of it to tape actually, so it was just a direct performance into
Oh,
tape.
cool.
Um,
Wow.
but the game soundtrack. It's more like in the box, come up with the melody, fill it out. It's cool. You can tinker with things afterwards. So that's the fun of recording. And I use Ableton Live.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Um,
Yep.
so you can come up with a melody and then kind of shift stuff around afterwards, do multiple takes. But yeah, it's all MIDI
Okay,
in
cool.
the box.
Cool.
Got it. Okay, so Grand Soul Story, that was a total solo development. We hear a lot about solo developments that are like mostly solo, but not solo. This seems like one of those ones that was like pretty much a solo development. And I'm just curious, like if you had resources for a bigger team, what would you have done differently in Grand Soul Story? If you had a bigger team for Grand Soul Story 2, which we know is coming, what would you do for Grand Soul Story 2? I'm just curious, like if resources were not an issue, what's your dream?
I mean, I guess if sky's the limit, probably not working an RPG maker. I guess working with a coder who can just have a little bit more control over how the game looks and stuff. Make a bush that can blow in the wind, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, probably just a coder and a pixel artist, somebody who can create original pixel artwork. But it's quite expensive, so
Yeah.
it's going to be another solo project.
I'm sure working on a game solo, even though you're kind of doing everything yourself, and that can be intimidating. And like, props to you for doing all of it. There's freedom that you're allowed. There's probably less roadblocks in some ways in just being able to make sure that your vision comes out how you're imagining it. That's also valuable too, I think. Jeremy, what else do you do for work or fun? And maybe what have you done previously to game development?
Yeah, I mean, this is a passion project, 100%. I made more money on this than I thought I would, which is really great. But no, I'm a psychotherapist by trade. I was an English teacher before. I play music in the city. I live in New York City and hang out with my wife, go walking. We're pretty introverted. We chill at home a lot. We're actually trying to get out and do like more things in the city because we live in New York. So it's like we probably shouldn't just spend so much time being cozy at home. To be honest, I really enjoy game development. I had no idea, but it's incredibly stimulating and engaging creative process. I think doing it solo, is that much more stimulating because it's keeping the whole story, a whole world. I'll be going on a run and like think of the name for like a tea that should be in the game. Like, oh, that's a cool name for like a seed that you find that you can make a tea with. And what if this little detail of the character's backstory meshes with this other one? And so it's like this. It's a wonderful mental exercise.
Yeah, all the millions of little pieces sort of just
shower moments is what I call those. Yeah.
Shower moments. Yeah.
It can happen
Exactly.
anytime. That's awesome. The past 5 to 10 years, I've seen a lot of discussions online about the classification of JRPGs. What makes a JRPG a JRPG? Some people would argue that, JRPG stands for Japanese RPG. So maybe only RPGs made in Japan should be considered JRPGs. Or maybe JRPG is an idea that can be emulated and then maybe iterated upon. And so all RPGs that sort of follow that formula are a JRPG. Or maybe it's a vibe thing. Maybe a game feels like a JRPG because of its world or its story. Where do you fall on this, Jeremy? Do you have a take on the JRPG classification?
And for the record, you're not going to offend either of us because I don't think either of us have a strong opinion.
I think we're still undecided,
Yeah.
honestly.
I mean, I guess you can help define it by thinking of what's not a JRPG. Yeah. The role playing aspect, I think, is less emphasized from what I've seen in JRPGs. It's not so much like you create a character and then you role play like a Dungeons and Dragons influenced experience. Whereas in a lot of Western RPGs, I find that to be more the case. But in the JRPG, I feel like you're dropped into a world with a preset characters. There's usually some kind of turn based or whatever the new Square version of that is. But it seems like a more defined narrative. I don't. Maybe I'm just making that up, but to me, it seems like Western RPGs generally have a little bit more of a D&D element.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
Yeah.
I definitely see that.
I think in
across-
general, I fall pretty close to where you do on this like argument. Is it? I guess some people get heated
yeah,
about it.
discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, slightly heated discussion sometimes, but
Generally, that's where I fall on
yeah,
it.
I feel
think.
like what you just said makes sense to me. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then finally, Jeremy, we already know about the sequel, but what are you looking forward to doing next, either in game development or otherwise?
We know you might be getting a dog too.
And
So
we know you might be getting out a little bit more and seeing the city.
Yeah. I mean that would be smart. My job is wonderful and intense, and I've kind of started it in earnest pretty recently. So I think it is helpful for me to on the weekends like do nothing, like turn my brain off and not be so engaged in this really intense process of game development. So what the future holds is probably a little bit more balance.
Mm.
I was going to school mostly when I was developing Grand Soul Story, and somehow I had more like cognitive space to work on the game then. But now that I'm working and I'm with real people, and there's a lot of notes, and it's a it can be an intense process emotionally. Um, I noticed that I need to, yeah, on the weekends, just like sit in a chair and not do anything,
Yeah.
and just hang out with my wife and make some food and take it easy. So that has slowed down the sequel development a little bit, just because for sort of balancing my own well being, need to not be stimulated quite so much.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, we wish you the best of luck with continuing to find that balance, and that you continue to be patient and do that self care that you need to do
Hmm.
do the things both professionally and on the side that you want to do.
It's hard to fit all of the things in whatever 24 times 7 is hours a week.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, it's been wonderful to talk to you about your game development, about Grand Soul Story, about your perspective. But we're not done with you yet. Now we're going to move on to our next segment with you, which is reviewing the game you chose from our list, Animal Well. It is our featured game. Animal Well is a 2024 Metroidvania puzzle platformer developed by Billy Basso of Shared Memory and published by Big Mode. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, "Explore a dense, interconnected labyrinth and unravel its many secrets. Collect items to manipulate your environment in surprising and meaningful ways. Encounter beautiful and unsettling creatures as you attempt to survive what lurks in the dark. There is more than what you see." So this is a 2D pixel art Metroidvania where you play as, I have here in my notes, a little guy. I was going to ask you guys, do you think this is like a blob? Is that what you would call it?
I mean, so whenever you encounter a game that has a slime, that's kind of what
Yeah.
the slimes look like.
Kind of.
I want to think he's a Digimon just from a biased point of view.
Like a phase one.
Yeah, like a little baby
Digimon?
Digimon.
That's fair. So I've been calling it like a little guy / a blob, but you don't really know what you are. But when you start Animal Well, you see 4 flames on screen, and you hear this bird-like sound as they each disappear. You hear this do-do-do, 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 do. And then you see a flash frame of a really mysterious face, if you're paying attention, before the first scene reveals, and there's this plant on screen, and you emerge from this plant, and you are this blob in a very large, dense, and dark well that's full of creatures. And immediately we see one of these creatures. We see a squirrel who we can try to chase but never catch. And at first, you can't really do much movement-wise, but the premise is really as simple as you need to explore this well and figure out its many secrets as you search for those 4 flames that you saw when you started the game. And the game has no spoken dialogue and hardly any written text. I think we see text to interact with objects and then in our inventory to see the names of things. But largely, this is just a wordless game, and we're exploring this very dark place. And that's really all I can say to set up the story and setting, I think. But DiscoCola, what are we doing in this game? How's the gameplay work?
So, as a freshly hatched baby Digimon, you can
That's-
move left and right, you can jump, and you can climb up and down ladders. Those are your, if I'm not mistaken, those are your only skills fresh out of the egg. But after that, you can collect different items that allow you to traverse in different ways. One of which, the most prominent, in my opinion, is the bubble wand. This will allow you to access bubbles that you can jump on and reach higher and higher points. You get a disc that allows you to distract enemies, and you can ride on it to get across larger chasms. And then there are several other items that will remove other obstacles, such as spikes, such as dark rooms that are hard to navigate or have very mysterious enemy in them. And you can gain access to moderate amounts of firepower. This is mostly like a scare tactic against some of the other animals in the well in the form of firecrackers. But yeah, it's a lot like a Metroidvania, but you are a small and vulnerable little baby Digimon. And so you really, really, really rely on your tools above any increase in strength or physical ability.
And this game is known for sort of having layers to everything you can do. Some people might say there are three. I've seen people describe it as 4 layers. There's finding those 4 flames and getting the credits.
Yep.
That's what most people will do and then probably stop. But then beyond that, you can find these hidden eggs and get all the achievements. The 3rd layer actually involves some even deeper puzzles with ARG elements where members of the community have actually solved things together because everybody gets maybe a piece to something larger. And then the 4th layer is the deepest, and it involves things like repeat playthrough and speedrun challenges and very deeply hidden clues, extremely obtuse puzzles that Billy Basso, the creator, wasn't sure maybe how long they would take to be solved. They have already been solved by the community, but it did require some work to get there. And I don't think it's something one person could easily do by themselves. Some history around this game. This is the first game published by Big Mode, the publishing company started by Jason Gastrow, aka Video Game Donkey, and his wife Leah. And it's the debut game from Shared Memory, which is comprised of Dan Edelman on the business side and Billy Basso, who we've already mentioned. Billy will probably come up a couple times today. He did everything. He did the gameplay, the puzzles, the graphics, the music, the sound effects, etc. He built a custom game engine for Animal Well. And it's this custom engine that actually led to the PC version being so efficiently sized that it was only around like 30 megabytes in size for the PC version, which is wild.
I think you can fit that on like a Game Boy Color cart.
Right? And then this game was nominated for lots of industry awards, including Best Independent Game and Debut Indie Game at the Game Awards, several Golden Joystick Awards. I'm sure others. We're sort of recording this earlier in the middle of award season, so it will probably get more recognition in that area. Jeremy, can you tell us why you picked Animal Well from our list of ideas of featured games? I know there's like probably over 100 games in there. What stuck out to you about this game?
I mean, I think it's the kind of the mystery and the intrigue that you alluded to earlier. Just has this aura of mystery that's, I think, kind of top to bottom in the advertising and the visuals, the music that just makes you curious. Like, what is this? So that drew me in.
Were you sort of tracking this game ahead of its release? Did you know about it, or did it sort of come out and then you found it?
I hadn't. I don't think I'd been tracking it, but I heard about it. I heard a lot of really great reviews, so it had that kind of prestige, I guess,
Nice.
going into it. So I was like, "Ooh, this is yeah." It's like when HBO releases some new important show. You're like, "Oh, this
Sure.
is kind of high level."
Yeah, the hype was
So
there, and then you were just
the
like, "I have
hype,
to know what happens." Cool.
yeah, yeah.
So, Jeremy, after now playing it, what are your overall thoughts on Animal Well?
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, first of all, just hearing that it is a solo developer, it's insane. The optimization, obviously, it's it's like sort of pixelated, but it just runs so wonderfully smoothly, which is really nice. And just kind of the atmosphere is really something special. I don't know why this came up for me, but it kind of reminds me of Breath of the Wild in a weird way, just
Hmm.
in that if you think you can do something, you probably can.
Mm.
um, I think that makes the game really compelling. Is like a lot of Metroidvanias. I think it's just you get the item and then you shoot the thing with the particular item and then it opens a door. But in this game, it's like you get a tool and you can just use it in many different ways. I've played a fair share of Metroidvanias, but I can't remember one that does that particular thing where a tool is a tool that you can use in many different ways. I guess the closest thing it reminds me of is this old game called Knight. I don't know if you guys have heard of it or played it. It's like Knytt, but it's the first Metroidvania that I fell in love with, and it's very similar with kind of atmospheric music,
Hmm.
beautiful sort of minimalistic art, and this world that's just strange. Like you don't really know what's going on, and you kind of want to. It kind of pulls you into to learn more. So the gameplay is really compelling. It's totally wordless, so it's just visual sort of storytelling. I think the first thing that stuck out to me was just the audio visual is incredible. It's incredibly immersive. The sound design, there's like panning left and right, so if something is going on the right side of the screen, you'll hear it over here. So it makes it very immersive.
Mm.
Great kind of alien, sort of spooky sound design for these creatures that you don't really know what they are exactly. I mean, they're animals, but they're kind of phantasmagorical. Now that you mentioned the Digimon blob, I'm kind of curious. Like, are those questions answered at some point about what you are and why you're in this well? And there's all these weird animals, and I don't know if the narrative has lore that makes sense of that, or if it just has an internal logic where you just kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think my take on it is that it's not explicitly described. I think you're just always this blob, and really it's more about the feeling and it's about the vibe of where you are. And it's
Yeah,
about celebrating your intuition and ability to use what you call tools. I think that's a great way to describe it. How do you use the tools in your toolbox in increasingly different ways? Because the game
Hmm.
keeps revealing new ways to use items and combine items too.
Yeah, and that's also kind of the Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom kind of thing. Is like there's a difference between just kind of puzzles and this thing where it's like you're really just interacting with this world, and I guess this will work if I do this, and it has that sort of feeling to it. Yeah, I guess the highest praise I can give for it is that it really feels like you're in a place. It's
Yeah.
not it's not video gamey. It's like an experience. It really feels like there's this place called Animal Well, and you're there,
Mm,
and it has its own set of rules and sounds and visuals, and I feel like when I'm playing the game, like I am somewhere. I
yeah.
I also like the CRTV kind of the lines on the screen.
Mhm.
It just feels like a real place.
If you were to assign this game a score out of 10, what would you give it, Jeremy?
Gosh, I mean, for a Metroidvania, 10 out of 10. I've just not been in a Metroidvania mood in particular, so I wasn't super compelled to like just dive into it. But yeah, I think it's a kind of a video game work of art, I guess you could say, because it has that essential quality of being an interactive medium, and it just does that
Mm,
so well, and it's so immersive. It's not a book pretending to be a video game or a movie pretending to be. It's just a pure video game, and it's
yeah.
a pure
It
experience.
really could not exist as any kind of other media. Like
Yeah,
this
exactly,
could
and
only
it
be
does
a
that
video
so
game.
well. So how could you not 10 out of 10 it? That's just how I feel.
Awesome. Cool.
All right. Well, 10 out of 10 for Jeremy Reineck. That's what we've etched down in stone for our record-keeping future.
And then, Disco, what are your overall thoughts on Animal Well? I'm so curious because
Yeah.
I think you know more about what I feel about this game, but I don't know what you think about this game.
I think I already know your score, and I think I already have it written down. But yeah, okay. So my overall thoughts on Animal Well. I was following the development of this for a little bit before I had played it, so I really hyped it up quite a lot in my head. And early spoilers, I know I didn't like it quite as much as Bopo did. And I think a little bit of that has to do with the level of hype that I did have was maybe too high.
Oh, that can happen.
That can happen. But that's not to say that I don't like the game. Like Jeremy was talking about, I love the visual identity of the game. I've been looking forward to this like bizarre, foggy scanline barrage of cool colors. I think the game looks like it's damp and electric at the same time.
Yeah.
And I love all these like bizarrely shaped animals. Jeremy said phantasmagoric. I think that's a perfect word for it. Like the wolf that you have to encounter just looks so strange and creepy, and I hate his little eyes, but it looks
Yeah.
so cool.
And I think I was reading up on this game. I've been researching this game over the past several months, like ever since I first played it in May 2024. I've just like looked up videos and articles about it here and there. I've listened to interviews with Billy Basso, and I think some of those movements of the animals were procedurally generated somehow, or just sort of automatically generated in some ways to sort of give that uncanny feeling
yeah.
to this world. That these animals are like, you recognize that that's a dog, but it's also not a dog.
Yeah, it's a bit odd. The mice are strange, it's yeah. So that lived up to the hype for me. Like that's far and away my favorite part of the game. With one exception, I did eventually come to love every boss fight. There's even some lesser boss fights that show up in like unexpected places, and it's pretty fun to learn how to like deal with these encounters while you're panicking because you don't actually understand what's happening. So like I kind of grew to like pretty much all of the boss fights eventually. I really like that you get the bubble wand very near the beginning because in my opinion it opens up a majority of the map. Like if you're struggling in one direction, you can try another. But even if you're traveling in a direction with more advanced obstacles that maybe you'll have an easier time with, if you have, say, like the lantern or the yo-yo, in many cases you can still kind of brute force your way to the other side of the screen with the bubble wand because, like, it really is a very useful tool. I really like analyzing puzzle screens to figure out which items need to be used, where, and in which order. It makes me feel smart, especially if I can pull it off on the first try. Double, especially if it's one of the slinky puzzles, because those can get a little convoluted. I like that the goal is made very apparent at the beginning. You get those 4 flames, and then you very early on find the 4 statues in the center of the map. You get it. You understand like what you're supposed to do, and it's like marked on your map. You just have to figure out how to use your tools to get there. I like the variety and styles of puzzles, but you also don't have to expand your skill set in vast ways in order to like travel through the bass tunnels. Like you're not getting better at the game just by learning how to travel through the bass tunnels or by deflecting water fountains or riding fan currents. You just have to figure out how to use your tools in different ways. You're not getting like physically better at the game. I did love finding new eggs and then doing egg cleanup, albeit with a guide.
Yeah.
Afterward is really fun, and this might actually be my favorite part of the game is the egg cleanup. I'm having a lot of fun.
Love the egg hunt.
I'm having a lot of fun with the egg hunt.
Nice.
And even though I get what I feel is pretty much the best item pretty much right away, I still feel more powerful at the end of the game than I do at the beginning. Now, on that point, I do want to move into things that don't work quite as much for me.
Sure.
I praise the bubble wand, but I do think it's a bit overpowered. This isn't a massive complaint because I don't like challenge in most cases, so I'll take an easier time if I can get it.
Yeah.
And even though I said I feel way more powerful at the end of the game with all my items than I did at the beginning, I never felt one singular jump and ability to be more significant than what I gained from the bubble wand.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Maybe for you, there needs to be more hummingbirds to pop your bubbles.
I mean, like I said, I don't like the challenge, but
Right.
that would probably do it.
Yeah.
Yes. Another thing I didn't like, I just hated the Manticore section. Like,
Okay.
it was super satisfying once I did finally finish it, but that has a lot more to do with like I was super frustrated in that moment, and then I was just relieved to be done with it because I was faced like trying to use my bubble jump, but I was also in this insane panic mode, and so I was just like
Yeah.
missing jump after jump after jump, and then I'm falling into a platform that I can't recover from, and the Manticore is going to get me before I can even do anything.
I struggled with that section too, and it took me too long to realize you can use the lantern to ward it off.
Yeah, and I learned about the lantern, and even still, like, struggled pretty big time, especially in those sections where I had to panic bubble jump.
It's a high intensity moment, and I think we can say like the name of the section, but we're not explaining what's going on because it is sort of like a big moment.
Yeah,
It's hard to spoil because how do you describe it? You
right.
know?
Yeah, and you can't anticipate that it's coming really.
Right.
So, and all of that's not to mention the like section before it with the shadow baboons or whatever they are.
Yeah.
I found that section on its own pretty difficult.
I actually
too.
kind of struggled with that more than the Manticore. Yeah.
So yeah, I just did not really like that section pretty much at all. And then when you look at the map, it's all pretty tightly packed. However, I wish that like adjacent sections were more connected. Like these sections on the map that are further out from the center seem like they're maybe only connected to an adjacent section at one spot, like if at all. And in some cases, these one spots are behind a series of like one-way rooms.
Yeah, so you have to go through a route that's very specific.
Yeah.
To get back there. Yeah.
And additionally, just by looking at the map, I can't always tell like which section is where. There's like a lot of themed sections in Animal Well, but apart from a few like very significant set pieces that are very easy to discern on the map, I can't really tell one apart from the other. But that almost doesn't matter as much because of my last complaint, and that is the warp room. I feel like the warp room could use some work. Like in hindsight, I know that the map has a marker system, and I could have maybe used this marker system to help with this complaint. But if you ask me, the teleporter heads should automatically be color coded and marked on the map so that if I'm on my way to somewhere, I can open my map and I can quickly decide, is it faster for me to go on foot from where I am now? Or should I teleport? And then I also, immediately know which teleporter head to use if that's the case. Because, going back to my overall map complaint, these teleporter heads aren't immediately, representative of a section on the map for me. So I'm slowly just kind of, inching through each teleporter head to see, oh, is this the right one? Nope,
Oh.
I'm super far away from where I want to
Yeah.
go. Is this the right one?
Yeah, I drew lines on the map and I would just open the map and see oh, it's the middle right one I need to use. So I was drawing these long lines
Okay,
on my map. But that's a system that I figured out for me.
yeah.
That might not work for someone else. That might be too much,
Yeah. And then, additionally, just to nitpick even more on the teleporter system, some of these, I can't even tell the canine head from the bear head. To me, they both look like bear heads. The only reason I knew the canine head was a canine head is because it brought me to the section close to the wolf boss thing. So, all of that is to say, Animal Well is a game that I hyped up maybe a little bit too much in my head, and I do regret that. However, there are some post-game items that are really saving me some time on my egg cleanup, and egg cleanup is proving to be one of my favorite parts of the game, to the point where it did boost my score that I came with today. I like that many of the rooms are puzzles for your various tools, but some of them are just so strange to me to the point where an ordinary player is not really going to take the time to explore it. And as much as I want to collect the no death and speedrun extras, I don't think I have the skills to do it, possibly ever. So I'm a little bit upset by that. But no matter what, I never stopped loving the look of Animal Well, and I came with a score, but I want to give it with the caveat that I expect to like the game more once I've finished Egg Cleanup.
Mm.
So if we do decide to bend the rules, maybe my final score changes. But for me today, Animal Well is an 8.0.
An 8 out of 10. Okay. Interesting. I actually expected you to come here with a better score, but it's still a positive score. You're
Yeah.
still liking a lot in this game. And yeah, I was in the same boat where I was anticipating this game leading up to its May 2024 release. It ended up hitting for me completely. Animal Well, I think, is a masterpiece in every conceivable way. I love how it feels to play, from jumping to using items to the movement speed. It all feels perfectly tuned to me. I love this very inspired set of creative gear that you find. And Jeremy, I love how you put it. You put it as like tools. They are tools. You find these tools and they allow you to do things that I've never seen in a game before. And I always love looking for that in games. What does this game do that I've never done before and may never do again? And you find ways to use them that kind of blow your mind. And then you keep finding new ways to use them over and over and over again. And some games would give you one item that feels innovative. When you take all the layers of this game, all the secrets, all the chests that you eventually open, this game gives you 12 items, which is wild. And they all work in very unique ways. I love how this game makes me feel, and I love how it feels when I solve puzzles in Animal Well. I feel very smart. I feel like one of the smartest versions of myself that has ever existed. This is due to the fact that the puzzles are so cleverly spaced and communicated, and it all happens silently. I can just sort of intuitively use this tool in a way that I think the game is wanting me to use in a certain way, but it's not holding my hand. And so that feels really rewarding to figure out. I think it feels singularly secretive all throughout this game. The number of secrets and puzzles is astounding. As you're walking through every screen, you feel like eventually there must be something hiding in plain sight that I'm just not seeing yet because of other secrets you've found that are telling you, wow, this place is chock full of secrets. It feels like you're being watched sometimes too,
Mhm.
or that something could surprise you at any moment. And sometimes that does happen. And there's this subtle eeriness that gets under my skin. And so much of this has to do with how the game sounds. And so this is where I want to shout out the fact that on the music side, music is used very sparingly. It's hard to remember any soundtrack from this game, but when music is used, it's to even better effect, I think, because we're so used to not hearing music that then when the music hits, it is so surprising. I always get chills from hearing certain sound effects in this game too, like the cuckoo clock that plays every so often. It just kind of sort of gives me chills, like I get goosebumps. The animal sounds are haunting. One example of this, do you
I was
have
gonna
one?
say, yeah, the little like black spectral thing in the rooms that usually have a candle. Like
Yes,
the sound effect of that creature.
right, chasing
Mhm.
Yeah.
you. And the fact
Mhm.
that it is chasing you and that it's also making the sound is just like making it more horrifying. And even animals that don't chase you right away or don't, reveal what they're about yet, just the way they sound can sometimes just be off-putting, like crows, for instance. You'll find crows here and there. There's a room that has like 14 crows, but anytime you find crows, they will do the caw that crows do, but it's not quite the caw that you're used to. It sounds, instead of like a "ah," it's more like it's like someone in anguish screaming is what it sounds like to me. It's like a "ah," and that scares me. I'm just like, "What is this crow gonna do to me?" And, they're not nice. Not nice, those crows. And also, just like as a side note, I just admire that so many of the sounds are Billy's voice, that he just recorded himself saying something and then he warped it and changed it and added effects until it becomes something unnatural that we don't even recognize.
Wild.
Yeah, so looking into this game, just sort of on a meta level, I love looking into this game and seeing on a craft level how it was made. That's awe-inspiring. I also love the visuals for all the reasons you both have said. And then I think it has a very interesting map. I actually shout out the map in this game for using color and shape and detail to draw out the world. I can look at this map and I can remember where things are much more easily than other games that might just use simple rectangles to represent rooms. So I was able to navigate much better with this map. I don't think I have any dislikes for Animal Well. It's hard for me to think of them. If I had to pick one, it would just be that layer 2, finding the eggs, becomes so challenging for me to finish on my own, and then, like, layers 3 and 4, forget about it. I'm never figuring those out on my own, or even I'm never even, like, knowing how to start those on my own without looking up a guide. So, I wish more of the deeper levels of this game were doable by myself, but I guess that's kind of the point too. But overall, for me, Animal Well feels like a once in a lifetime game. It is this giant puzzle box of intrigue and even insidiousness, and it respects your intelligence and intuition. Its puzzles and layers just keep going and going and going, and it's all awe-inspiring to me. It's my favorite game of 2024. It's one of my top 5 indie games I've ever played. It's possibly my favorite Metroidvania of all time, although Hollow Knight might have something to say about that. We'll see how time will tell on this, but I give this a 10 out of 10.
Called it.
Yeah, you called it. You knew.
I knew.
So I want to know how Animal Well stands out in the Metroidvania genre. I think we've touched on this. You know, we talked about the tools and how we don't do this standard thing where we get a weapon and the weapon's pink, so we know we have to shoot the pink door. That's pretty immediately obvious as far as what stands out here. But I guess starting with you, Jeremy, what stands out about Animal Well that maybe hasn't been mentioned, and how might it inspire you as a game creator even?
In terms of the inspiration, it's just so incredibly cohesive. The sound design, the visuals, the mechanics, everything just works towards this goal of just piquing your curiosity, just wanting to, oh, what is that over there? Is that thing friendly or not? What is that? Can I interact with that thing? You know, it just feels like a living world. How does it stand out from Metroidvanias? Yeah, I'm thinking of the other ones I've played recently. I played Blasphemous. Yeah, I played Hollow Knight. Yeah, it reminds me of that other game, Knight, I guess, because it's a lot. It's not really combat oriented. It's a lot more puzzle oriented. I haven't played that many Metroidvanias. Do you guys? Can you guys help me out? Like, how many Metroidvanias are truly just mostly like puzzle based that you guys have played?
In my experience, I've played mostly combat ones, I feel like.
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember ones where I'm not swinging a sword or shooting a gun, and
Mhm.
I'm coming up kind of short, honestly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In general, yeah, that's what I'm used to as far as Metroidvanias go.
But
Um,
along the lines of the puzzle solving aspect being so heavy here, you know, I've solved puzzles in Metroidvanias, but there's so many interesting puzzles in here that it kind of takes me back to when I was a kid, and I would sometimes play what I refer to as playground games. Or I guess like maybe a more grown up version is a water cooler game, where it's a game that two people could start playing that don't really know anything about it, and they could compare notes every day and just be like, "Oh, I found the bubble wand and I found out I could get to this place with it." And the other person could say, "Oh, that's so awesome. I haven't done that, but I did this with the yo-yo. Did you
Mm.
do that?" And they're like, "No, I didn't know that." So I feel like it's kind of designed to be that way, is to maybe be in a way more social when you're in a circle of people playing it and you can share notes, I guess.
yeah, I think maybe I would have liked that actually. That might have helped me a lot. If I would have felt more comfortable talking to you about it as
Yeah.
I was playing through it.
Yeah, that would have been fun. But if you keep going with the egg hunt, maybe that's something we could do.
Okay. Yeah, for me, the first and forefront thing is, of course, the visual identity of it. I think that stands out a lot. Even in the boss fights that we do have, no single one is like the other. Like, one's sort of a chase section, one is sort of you have to lure one of the bosses into a certain position, and it's just,
Yeah, you almost can't call them fights, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's encounters.
yeah, and then you're only actually even trying to defeat them, quote unquote, in order to gain access to your actual goal. Like you don't have animosity toward these animals,
No, but
but you have to do it.
yeah, and sometimes what you do is horrific.
Yeah.
You don't know that that's necessarily what you're working toward. Like, I just think of the ostrich.
Yeah, the
in,
ostrich is
in the southeast corner. What happens there? I just sit there with my mouth agape for a couple seconds because of what happens to the ostrich. Like the ostrich was mean, but oh man! And then the music cue hits. Theme for like you just killed this big bird, you just drowned it, and that's really dark for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
The more you look into this game, like I said, I've looked into it the past few months. I'm just astounded by these innermost secrets, and like I encourage you, if either of you feel like you're done playing it on your own without any guidance or assistance or doing research, take some time, go to YouTube and just look up animal well secrets and watch some videos because it's fascinating what's done
Blow your mind.
with things right in front of your eyes, that things that you've passed by probably dozens of times. You're not sure if they mean anything. They probably do.
Mhm.
And while I play it, I feel like Billy Basso, the creator, I feel like he's I feel like he's somewhere nearby. I feel like he's like behind this curtain trying to have a conversation with me, but he's not talking to me. He's showing me things. And I don't always know what he's trying to tell me, but I'm always trying to listen. And I'm always more alert and curious the more I play. So that's what I would shout out as something that's different about this Metroidvania.
So, according to some of Bopo's research, Billy Basso's inspirations for Animal Well include old school Mario platformers, The Witness, Tunic, Fez, which is another game that we played earlier this season. How do we see these inspirations taking foot in Animal Well?
Yeah, the one that sticks out to me the most is Tunic. Just this kind of alien world that you just sort of go deeper and deeper into, and has its own kind of internal logic that you figure out over time. That reminded me a lot of that. Yeah, it's great platforming. Yeah, you mentioned something about the just how it feels to play, and it feels nice. There's a nice weight. There's a nice inertia. I haven't played The Witness. I haven't played Fez, so I can't speak to those too much.
Yeah, that's okay. Fez is really fresh on my mind because we just played it for the podcast, and I definitely see those connections. I see like things that feel like secrets right there in front of you, and you might have some of the bricks to build the building, as a metaphor, but you don't know what the building looks like.
Yeah.
And I'm still struggling with some of those things in Fez, like I am with Animal Well. It's like, what does this mean? I've seen this thing over and over. What does it mean? How do I do it? And that makes me more curious.
Yeah, for me it's the same. Like I'm thinking of like freeing the bobcats in Animal Well, and there are very similar like things that you have to do in Fez in order to find some of these secrets. And so
Mhm.
I'm thinking of that very, very specifically. So I see the Fez inspiration on some of the puzzles.
Yeah. And
Didn't Fez have like big end game secrets too that required a community to sort of figure out? It's had that communal puzzle solving
I think
aspect
so.
too?
I think there was an ARG aspect to it, or at least for the people who aren't the most diehard committed, there's that communal aspect of pulling together and just sharing the secrets.
Mhm.
And I did not find close to all the secrets in Fez, but I want to go back maybe with a guide and like figure it out. And also like with the classic 2D Mario inspirations, I recognize similarities with games like Super Mario World, where I think Super Mario World, which is one of my favorite games of all time, I think that game has layers. I think that game has the layer of
Mm.
just play the levels normally, get the goalposts that get you to Bowser,
Hmm.
fight Bowser, rescue Princess Peach, and get the credits. But then beyond that, you can find the secret exits. You can find the Star Road and the tubular levels and all those things. And I think like each of those is a layer that some people will never even know is in the game.
I may be
Mhm.
reaching, but there may even be a level of inspiration there where it's like if you learn how to manipulate the cape correctly, you can basically fly infinitely or whatever.
Mhm.
There's a little bit of that in like the bubble wand,
yeah, for sure.
and some of the platforming elements.
Yeah, the bubble wand is this game's cape from Super Mario World, kind of. Yeah, I like that. Next, let's talk about our favorite items and the clever ways they're used, the tools that we pick up in this game. Jeremy, what were you vibing with?
I think the frisbee is fantastic as something that can like break the stalactites or whatever, and also something you can surf on. Like I discovered that by accident. I don't think it tells you that you can do that. You just sort of find out, oh, I can jump on this thing and surf it. And then I realized, oh, I can surf this thing across screens. And oh, I can. There was one section where there's like a long lake, and then you can. I found a way to get up on this platform by going all the way across the lake on this little frisbee, or I guess it's called a disc. But yeah, I thought that was great. The really crunchy sound effects for breaking the stalactites that I loved. Another thing I love about the game is just how weird the items are. Like it's just there's a slinky, there's like a frisbee. It's just so odd.
It's just a bunch of junk that kids threw down into the well after they were done at the
Yeah.
park.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's
That
like
makes
the
sense,
drawer in the principal's office of all the confiscated items.
Where's my boomerang?
Yeah, the boomerang. DLC. That's funny.
Yeah. And then eggs, like eggs are so central. It's just such a random assortment of stuff, and matches and firecrackers. It's like, yeah, very strange.
Yeah, I want to throw it back to like what Jeremy said, that I didn't learn most of what the frisbee could do for a long time. For me, it was a tool to distract dogs for like the first half of my playthrough. I didn't know you could surf on it, so I was like brute forcing long screens with the bubble wand to very frustrating avail.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about breaking stalactites. But I think apart from the obvious bubble wand, eventually I found a lot of love for the yo-yo, because at first it felt like a mostly one-trick item, and then I accidentally broke some spikes with it. And it totally changed for me after that, because this yo-yo is saving me a lot of time with other items I was using that were just like less effective.
Yeah.
And so just the ability to break some of the breakable spikes with the yo-yo really changed that for me.
I actually figured things out with the disc in sort of an inverse fashion from you. I didn't try using the disc on animals. I was using it to surf around and break things. I didn't think about the relationship between the toys and the animals at all. I was just thinking like, oh, the dogs are something I have to avoid. There's nothing I can do. Maybe just use my bubble wand to go over them. That's all I could think of. So I was mostly using the disc to just ride around rooms and things like that. But then it was an accidental instance where, I think it was that I found out there's an animal that reacts to your yo-yo, and that's sort of what unlocked it for me. And then I wanted to try every item on every animal I encountered. And so I was doing this trial and error thing. And I also love rooms where you have to use multiple items. There's an egg called the plant egg. Um, there's this slinky switch.
Mhm.
You also have to ride on a disc through a couple of doors that the slinky switch unlocks. And I was overly convoluting this puzzle. I was throwing down the slinky, and then I was using my bubble wands to get up to the door, waiting for it, and then I was hopping on the platform that opens under the door and then throwing the frisbee. It was really, I was switching way too much, and I found out I don't have to use the bubble wand
Yeah.
for that.
I remember that one, but that one was still hard for me because I wasn't trying to use the bubble wand, but I am not good at getting on the frisbee.
It's still hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to time the jump. Yeah, so you kind of have to work for some of these exploits, I guess, to use the items, which is fun. Yeah, and also I just love the bubble jumping. Like I'd say learning that is so key to just unlocking so much in this game.
Yeah, and the thing is, it makes sense. Like it makes sense within the world that you could do that, but you have to discover it. But I love that it's all logical. Like everything that you can do, you just
Mhm.
have to think to do it.
Right?
Yep. So Bopo just mentioned one of these, but are there memorable animals or rooms that you have in particular?
I thought the cat was very terrifying and in a kind of a psychedelic way. um, the weird ghost cat thing.
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
if that I don't know if that shows up again, but yeah, I guess it's at the beginning where you have to get like a fake frisbee and replace it. But I didn't know that. I didn't know where to find the replacement frisbee, so I was just trying to run around the map with this cat chasing me.
Yeah. I
Um,
think that's actually a dog.
Yeah, I think it's meant to be a wolf.
it's a dog. Oh, it's a wolf. Oh, that's the wolf. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh yeah,
okay.
that's right. Yes.
Oh, okay, I saw that as a cat, but
Well, yeah, that goes back to like the phantasmagoric, you
Right.
know.
I thought it was a
yeah.
cat the first time I played, and then I thought it was a dog, and now it's actually a wolf. Yeah.
Do we know? We don't.
Yeah, I mean, it could be its own thing too.
Yeah. For me, there are a couple of slinky rooms, like slinky puzzles that stand out. It's just pretty much any of the slinky rooms that cause the platforms to move. Those are pretty memorable because you just have to master timing on those. And then as far as animals, the ostrich is pretty memorable. And then for me, the bobcats, like I saw this mama bobcat and I just that was really memorable because it's like one of the few ghostly looking entities that we don't actually interact with in any way.
Yeah, she's more in the background.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but it looks like she's gonna get me. Like if I jump over her, she's gonna swipe at me. But that's
She
not what
doesn't.
happens.
She just wants her babies.
Yeah.
That's why she's crying. She's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's a memorable animal for me. The kangaroo,
Oh my
which I still haven't finished with. But
Yeah.
I remember the first time I met the kangaroo. Oh, and the bird that puts its head in the holes to get you.
Oh yeah. Well,
That-
that's the ostrich.
Is
isn't
that
it?
the same
Yeah,
ostrich?
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Messed up.
Yeah.
And even just entering that screen, it's like a jump scare because it starts running towards you.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Speaking of jump scares, I love I don't know if this shows up later in the game as well, but there's a bat, like a huge bat, and you have to light this a little candle, and then you realize there's this huge creature behind you, and then it
Yeah.
starts chasing you around.
Yeah,
That was a great
I didn't
moment.
find that until I was doing trophy cleanup. I totally missed it. I think
didn't even
maybe
go
I
there.
didn't have a match or something the first time I got to that room.
Yeah, I think that is
Yeah.
more in one of those corners that you don't have to go to.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's
Did you
cool.
Oh,
see that?
I did see that, and it
Okay.
scared me too. I saw the outline of something, and then I lit that candle, and then it comes alive. So
Yeah.
this
That
game
was
is
awesome.
this game is
Awesome.
scary from time to time.
Yeah, it
But
is.
but
It
you
is.
know what? I still wouldn't necessarily call it like a horror game. It's
Mm-mm.
like
Yeah.
it's a moody game.
It's like a weird dream, kind of.
It is. That is a
Mhm.
good way to put it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that things like the dog or the wolf chasing you feel dreamlike. They're so wispy.
Yeah.
I was immediately curious about the mallard, the duck that you see close to the start of the game. It's just sitting there quacking, and like the mom cat, you can't really do anything with it. And that is one of those secrets that's just hiding in plain sight. I won't say any more, but there's something with that duck.
Oh, so there is something with it.
Yeah.
See, I kind of
Mhm.
came to the conclusion that it's Animal Well, man. There's just some animals there,
There's just
bro.
some animals. Like the worms crawling around in the darkness in that one really dark place. It's a beautiful area. I don't think those do anything. There are exceptions, but mostly when you see an animal that really only pops up one place, there's some secret
Okay.
to do with it.
I can think of two more. So now I'm curious about what those
Yeah.
secrets in plain sight are.
Another you might be thinking of is the groundhog.
Yep. That's one of the ones.
That's one I had to look up a video about. I'll say some of these secrets are more novel. They're more fun little, pun intended, Easter eggs, or just fun little gags. They don't always give you an item or mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but there's something there, which is kind of cool.
It's fun to
Makes
at
the
least,
world feel kind of interactive
Yeah.
too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you at least want to trigger every encounter once.
Yeah. And you'll find out about those things if you look up videos about secrets too.
And I'm definitely curious.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention one more thing before I forget that I love about the audio visuals is there's like a sense of physics to the gas and stuff and the fog.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
But like certain, kind of like when the cat is chasing you, and you kind of walk past it, you'll like create a wisp of the fog that'll move in a very natural way, sort of around your character and stuff. And yeah, I love that there's a sense of kind of physics that's not doesn't really do anything, but it just creates this atmosphere. It's so cool.
I always loved seeing the smoke from the firecrackers. When you
Yeah,
throw a
yeah,
firecracker, it
exactly.
does that kind of wispy thing too. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. The
it's
particles are awesome in the game. That adds a
totally.
lot, I think, to the visual element.
And then lastly, what questions do we still have about the mysteries of the game? Like, what are you thinking about the most as far as what you don't know yet?
I mean, I'm kind of curious if there is some sort of explanation. Like, do you guys know the game Braid?
Yeah, I know of it.
Yeah,
I played it like a long time ago. I never finished it,
yeah,
but yeah, definitely
That's
aware of it.
that's the big big indie game that I just like don't actually know anything about. It's just like we
yeah.
came to this podcast and it was like, we're gonna play Braid someday, and I'm like, okay, and that's
Yep.
all I know about it.
And it just got the anniversary edition in 2024. Like it's got
Yeah.
the definitive edition. But yeah,
But anyways, to your
Nope.
point,
Yeah, no, Braid is great, and it is kind of mysterious. It's another sort of puzzle platformer, but there is kind of an inherent mystery to the mechanics that is resolved by the end. There is a purpose to all of it, and I wonder in Animal Well if it's more just a kind of a dreamlike experience, or if there's some sort of significance to what's going on, to the eggs and all the weird items and whatever your creature is and why there's the animals in the well,
yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, I also wonder, like, is it sort of left up to the player to imagine it too? Sometimes
Hmm.
that's kind of a
Yeah.
fun little thought experiment for people, and everybody can kind of come up with their own theories.
Hmm. Hmm.
for me, it's as simple as what happens when I get all the eggs and then get what I assume is like a true ending, quote unquote. For me, that's the mystery that I'm waiting to solve. And now that Bopo's mentioned a couple of these like secret and plain sight animals, I want to go back to the like Capuchin family or whatever and see what they're about, and the
Mm.
groundhog and
Did you both see like the bunny at the start of the game, like near the start?
maybe
It's up in the corner of one of the first screens in a little
yeah.
like cove. You can find that bunny, but there are more bunnies. The bunnies are a huge part of like layer 3 and 4 of the
Okay.
game. Yeah.
I think
Hmm.
I think there's like a trophy for finding the bunny, right?
There's a trophy for finding that bunny or a bunny. Yeah.
I just accidentally got that one, so
Okay.
I have found one, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. But I'll leave it at that. I won't spoil
Okay.
anything. And I have already spoiled myself on like what's hiding in this game. There could be more secrets that maybe people haven't found yet. I just don't know. But one of the things that tripped me up the first time I played this game twice. One of the things that tripped me up at first was I found some sequences of 5 arrows,
Mhm.
and I pulled out my flute trying to play those notes and nothing happened. And it has to do with something that was actually mentioned earlier, but I won't say what it was.
Yeah.
I'm being so mysterious. Sorry,
Yeah.
but that's an instance where I was just like, "Oh, I want to know what that's about,"
Yeah.
and I didn't have the patience to figure it out myself.
I'll be honest, that discovery 100% guide driven. I did not
Mhm.
I might have found one of the sets of arrows casually, but the rest of it I was just like, nope, guide time
Yeah,
for me.
sure. Anything else to say about Animal Well?
Just shout out to Billy Basso. It's an amazing achievement. How long did it take to make the game? Do you know?
I think
The development.
7 years or something like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I think I first saw anything about it 2.5 years ago. I think is
Mhm.
the first time I saw something about it.
And that's closer to the time when Big Mode got involved as the publisher. So Billy
Yeah.
worked on it sort of more alone for years before that point, even, which is
Oh wow.
incredible.
Okay.
Incredible. Like it was a passion project on the side for a long
Mhm.
time.
One thing that I want to mention before the end of the episode, and it had nothing else to do with anything else that we've talked about. There's an item similar to the lantern that you can get, and it allows you to see even more.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
found something that shows up in another indie game of ours that we played in a previous episode called Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. In Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, there's an achievement for, quote, finding all of the Chads. And I found a Chad in
Oh.
Animal Well. So I'm going to hand you my laptop so you can actually see what that looks like. I found one of those guys in Animal Well. And
No way.
I felt really happy to have found that. That's it.
Actually, now that you say that, speaking of Fez and Tunic, I believe.
Oh, I know what you're talking about with Fez.
Yeah, so there are Easter eggs with those games in this game too.
Mhm.
Yeah. To be fair, I don't think this like Chad thing is specific to Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. I think this
Sure.
is a popular
It's a
graffiti.
it's a thing.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah, that's a whole other layer, is using that item in that way and finding new things. But Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to help us review Animal Well. Can you tell us again where to find your game Grand Soul Story?
You can find Grand Soul Story on Steam. If you search Grand Soul Story in Google, it should be the first thing that pops up. It goes on sale relatively regularly, and you can also find the original soundtrack, I think, anywhere that you can stream music. If you search Grand Soul Story, it should pop up.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you again, and good luck with everything in the future. We look forward to seeing more from you when it's time. And that will do for our review of Animal Well. You can play it on PC, Switch, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. Jeremy rated it a 10. DiscoCola rated it an 8. I rated it a 10. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Oni Mochi. Underplayed is on Bluesky, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at UnderplayedPod. You can find me in those places at Bopo. That's BO_PO.
And I am at DiscoCola in most of those places to varying degrees. And you can check out Underplayed at twitch.tv/underplayedpodcast, where we have probably finished playing Octodad at the time this episode has come out. But we will always play our co-op featured games and release early premieres of all of our new episodes on the Monday night before their release.
Next episode, we will have 2 more secret games to review, and our featured game will be Octodad, Dadliest Catch, an adventure game that we're going to play cooperatively, and it's developed by Young Horses. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.